Greetings from Snake Mountain Boat Works on Saturday, December 7, 2024. Here's an update on our 1950 Chris Craft U22. As is pretty obvious, her bottom is fully installed and it's time for next steps. But I've had a series of questions that I would like to answer. How did we get here? Where did we start? What comes next? What do we use? How do we do it? So if you'll remember from several videos ago, we first fabricate an inner skin that's comprised of 6mm Meranti marine plywood that has been cut into planks. And we install those planks with 1.5" copper flathead ring shank nails. And we start at the transom, and all these planks are installed at a 45-degree angle with respect to the center line of the hull, the keel. Before we actually do the installation, every one of those planks receives 4 full coats of Smith's clear penetrating epoxy sealer. We use the cold formula year-round, mainly because it cures more quickly and in our tests penetrates much further into the wood than does the warm formula. So each of those inner skin planks receives 4 coats of Smith's, front, back, edges, and ends. And then we install all of them. But as we do, we have to kind of keep track of where things are beneath. So as we have with the outer skin, we keep track by putting a line every place there is either a batten or a frame. Why do we distinguish? The frames get number 8 by 1.5" silicon bronze flathead wood screws. The battens, since they're only about 3/4, a strong 3/4 of an inch thick, receive 1 inch, 8 by 1 silicon bronze Frierson drive flathead screws. So the entire inner skin has been installed. It's all bedded in 5200. As each plank goes down, we put a bead of 3M 5200 on the frames. And then when we have all of the inner skin in place, some poor soul gets to live underneath this thing for several hours while each of the batten, remember these float. So each of these battens is buttered with 5200. And in that case, of course, we use mahogany because there will be undoubtedly some squeeze out. And there's nothing worse in my world than looking down into somebody's bilge and seeing ribbons of white 5200 squeeze out all over the place. The mahogany, well, here's some mahogany we use right here because this squeeze out possibly penetrates to the inner surface of the hull right here. So now we've got the inner skin down, nailed, 5200'd, if that's a word. And yes, then it's time for Smiths again. We apply another really full coat on the entire inner skin. Let it cure, and then begin milling out and dry shaping and dry fitting. We don't use any old bottom material. That's the one place that even the ACBS Judge Corps now holds that you will not be penalized for replacing your bottom with a 5200 bottom. Their rationale, it's a matter of safety. Those ancient planks, let's take this boat. She left Algonac in 1950. My calendar tells me she's now 74 years old. The bottom we removed was her original bottom. All that planking, inner and outer skins, was 74 years old. That is the only thing keeping you from resting on the bottom when your bottom fails at 30 knots. So we dry fit every plank and put them down using some strategic placement of some screws, and then work on the next one. And we start at the keel. That's the straightest of all of the planks. As you get out towards the edge, you see we have way too much fun reproducing precisely the original plank pattern. So we screw all those down, and we use a spacer, 1/16 of an inch thick, little piece of wood. Sort of like you do when you are putting down an outdoor deck and you're putting down the planks and you want them to be exactly parallel. I usually use a number 8 nail dropped in along the way. Well, we do the same thing with a strip of wood. In fact, a stirring stick is just about the width, our target width for our seams. So these are all laid down. They're fastened down, and including, if you focus right here, see the big dimple? Another one, and another one, and another one. When you take this plank and bend it, and what you want to do is start at the bow. One guy's got some screws and some big flat washers. Start at the bow. The other guy has the unpleasant task of bending this plank, and this particular plank goes to right here. So it's about 7 feet long. So we work from the bow, keep bending it down, and securing it along the way. The problem is, this distance doesn't have as much bend as this. And also, as you bend it down, it wants to rotate. It wants to twist. So we've discovered that if you use a number 8 screw, just the same one you're going to use, and a big washer, then you can start shaping the hull the way you want. So we let that sit for 2 or 3 days. It helps. I mean, it's not really an issue back there. We could just start and go. But up here, the wood needs to develop a bit of a memory, and we've discovered it really makes a huge difference. Everything then comes off. The inside face of every one of these planks, and both edges and all ends, receive 4 coats of Smith's clear penetrating epoxy sealer cold formula. Next comes buttering. So let's suppose we've already worked from the keel to here, and this is the next plank to go. And we work from the transom forward. So we will, with using putty knives, we lay down a bed of white 5200 in this case. We shoot for about 7/16 of an inch thick to start with. And then we begin sinking the number 8 by 1.5 inch screws all the way down. This section had the same set of guidelines as you can see over there on port. And we'll explain why you don't see them anymore now. So we're screwing these down, and as we do, we get squeeze out along every seam. And no, for those of you who keep insisting that you don't have to have anything in here at this point, because then you can take a caulking gun and fill your seams. Well, if you can get 5200 into the seams from the outside, your seams are too big. There's your test. There's no way you could pay 5200 into a seam that's 1/16 of an inch wide. So everything gets screwed down. Then we take a putty knife, and any place any 5200 is proud, we simply work along, pick it up, and don't waste it. That's 5200 is expensive, and it's getting more expensive every day. So we just lay that down and leave it for the next plank. So now we've got all the planks down. All of the 5200 squeeze out has been shaved off using a putty knife. At this point, we have this, all right? Lines are still here. Things are pretty rough and ragged. There are a couple of little surface splits in places. So now it's time to use 80 grit paper and a really powerful orbital sander, as Rick has begun doing, and sand this flat. The whole thing. So far, it was yesterday afternoon, Rick spent several hours and sanded to here. These squiggly lines, nobody tries to sand a surface fair without the squiggly pencil lines. What you want to do is you don't want this thing to be humped. So you just want to make the line disappear, right? All the way along. That brings us to where we are right now. She's ready to have all of her countersinks filled. And understand that we kept track, and as of this point, and I haven't gotten the latest count, we've gone through 30 boxes, each of which had 100 number 8 by 1.5 inch silicon bronze, fierce and drive wood screws in them to get to this point. Now, we're sure as hell not going to bung every one of these. No, it's time to bring out the 3M Marine Premium Filler, which is a 2-part filler. You use your putty knife and scoop out not more than, a golf ball sized blob is way too big. It'll cure on your paddle before you can pay it into, all of it into countersinks. So I'd say, I don't know, a ball about 3/4 of an inch in diameter, somewhere around there. You'll find out if the shop is hot and this stuff is all very, very warm. Just don't mix up an egg-sized batch. You won't get through 1/3 of it before you can't spread it out. So what we'll do is at each one of the countersinks, right, we spread it out. It's almost like sheetrocking, right? You've got to get the mud off on the seam smooth. Of course, there you've got an 8 or 10 inch wide knife. These are what, 1.5 inches? But they're flexible. You don't want one that's super stiff. You want one that bends easily. So you just go through, and on the first pass, what you're really trying to do is get some stuff in the holes. And in most cases, it will be spread beyond the holes. You can scrape it off and work. But once you've got the entire surface filled, yes, that's right, every single countersink, you come back with your flat sander again and you sand the whole bottom again. You'll end up doing that about 4 times. Now, not all of these countersinks, though, will receive bungs. We don't buy bungs. We simply use a bung cutter and a drill press and our cutoffs and scraps and whatever to make our own bungs. The chine rail will receive the 3M filler as long as it's beneath the water line. But here you can see the water line is right here. So all of these bungs, and usually just to be safe, we'll usually bung some of them in this kind of an area because they're above the water line, they're above the boot stripe, and this wood will end up being stained and varnished. So once you've got your bottom fully filled with 3M Marine Premium Filler and sanded absolutely fair, guess what? I sound like a broken record yet? It's time, once again, for Smith's Clear Penetrating Epoxy Sealer. But of course, that's if you are not going to do the Dannenberg pre-soak process before sealing the wood. We will be doing that. That's the stuff of a future video. And for now, I think we've got you pretty much to this point. One last item. The easiest way to make sure these are all clean, just get out the shop vac. Don't put any kind of brush or anything on it, just the plastic end held vertically and moved along. You want to empty all the dust out of these. So our 1950 Chris-Craft U22, by this time next week, will probably be ready for bottom paint. We start out, our primer for a 5200 bottom is Interlux Interprotect 2000E, again, a two-part primer. We switch between white and gray as we move from coat to coat. That helps us find any holidays in the coat that we're putting down. So this, I know you've heard me way too many times, but you're gonna hear it again. This stuff is gold. It costs a ton. So you say, oh, well then I won't apply the full 5 coats. 3's good enough. Well, go ahead, put on 3. You've just wasted, God knows, several $100s, and you have a bottom that it does not have a barrier coat protection. Once this barrier coat cures, it'll be time to apply the Pettit Old Salem copper bronze hard racing bottom paint. Now, Pettit has brought out a version of this that is ablative. You don't want that. You want the hard racing copper bronze. And with that, we wish you well, and we'll be back very soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye for now from Snake Mountain Boat Works.